Sounds good.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Alex Obarski. I have the great pleasure of having someone who is a doctor of osteopathy with a master's in clinical nutrition, numerous certifications in chelation, IV therapies, Reiki, personal training, group fitness. She specializes in youthful longevity, ageless beauty, and human optimization. And our topic is liposomal glutathione, understanding the role of the human body's most powerful antioxidant. My great pleasure to welcome Dr. Danielle Roberts. Yay. Nice to have you, Danielle. So I want to talk about proactive approaches to healthcare. I want to talk about longevity. I want to talk about glutathione. I want to talk about everything. I also want to talk about your personal experience in navigating the world and some of the things that you went through, hear a little bit of your side of the story. I know we got to hear the world's side from many angles and very often, but perhaps you can shed some light from your side and see if we can counterbalance that information, because I find that people are so quick to make up their mind when they hear something come from a source of authority. But over the last 3 years, we've seen how lack of integrity and interest in the actual truth that these entities have. So the little voices that we get to share our side, and that's something. So nice to have you, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Alex. It's such a pleasure. Love what you do, and I'm happy to be here.
So what's glutathione?
What is glutathione? Well, I guess maybe the simplest way to explain it is it's the master antioxidant in our body. For those people that maybe don't know what antioxidants are, simple way to explain it. You guys have heard, I'm sure, of antioxidants like resveratrol that we get in grapes or wine or dark chocolate or all the fun things, green tea. And they're there to really scavenge free radicals. So as we age or exercise, or even just sitting here talking to you, Alex, our bodies create free radicals in the process of making energy. So they're like little ping pong balls that are, these reactive electrons, like ping pong balls in our bodies, and they can create damage or destruction if not properly comforted by another antioxidant and kind of carried out of the body. So the master antioxidant that does that work is glutathione. And it's so important that our bodies make it on its own. We don't have to get it from grapes or anything else, but our livers and our bodies actually produce it on its own.
So we have an abundance of glutathione when we're younger, and we manufacture an abundance of it. And it helps with the actual detoxification. You spoke about in your excellent presentation that you have a genetic predisposition for not being able to detoxify, the soup of chemicals that we're bathing in every day. I have that same gene as well. We might be related. Maybe you're like my little cousin sisters.
We all go back to at least some point of union, right? So we're all brothers and sisters. I'm sure we're related in some way.
Way to view the world, Dr. Roberts. So we're predisposed for not being able to detoxify the heavy metals that we're exposed to, all the plasticides and all these things. So glutathione is an important part of this ability for the body to detoxify from where? From the liver, from all over?
Well, I guess, gosh, I have so many thoughts. I guess, yes, in terms of from where, I think the biggest thing to understand is that our body is made up of cells, and every single cell in your body does the same processes for the most part. They all have to receive oxygen and nutrients to be able to make energy, and they all need to get rid of waste and detoxify so that they can continue to function optimally. So whether it's a head cell, a brain cell, a butt cell, they all need to do the same things. So our heart pumps blood throughout our whole body to circulate the nutrients, the oxygen, all of those things. And similarly, it pumps glutathione throughout our entire body to deliver it to all of the cells everywhere so that it can get intracellular, which is very important. We could talk more about that, so that the cells can utilize it to do exactly what we just said, to be able to make more energy and scavenge free radicals, keep our DNA and mitochondria healthy so that we don't wind up, damaging our DNA or mitochondria, leading to even things like cancer or chronic fatigue, things like that.
So, I find it interesting, like when you have an antique car, right? If it's like a 1970s Triumph TR6, which I had, very
Nice.
sexy two-seater English,
Ooh.
six-cylinder straight engine, four-speed, very, very cool convertible, red. And
Tell us
so,
more.
so to maintain that car, we understand that you got to have enough engine oil in that engine. You got to have brake fluid in the brake system. You got to have some basic things. You got to keep the paint so it doesn't rust, so the body doesn't rust. So there's some basic things we understand to maintain this classic car for 50, 60 and more years. There are certain simple steps we can take to make sure that that happens. With the human body, similarly, there are very simple demands that the human body requires to stay healthy and live a long time, circumventing many of these chronic illnesses that we have accepted in our society as the norm, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's weren't even that prevalent before like the 1970s, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And so we understand that this toxicity that we're exposed to is contributing to it. And if we have the genetics that we're not able to detoxify, that's when we're that's what the segment of the population on that bell curve. People that can do whatever they want and they never get sick, and people that do everything right and they're always having issues. So glutathione helps with the detoxification process of all that. So there are a couple of different options, right? There's the intravenous option and there's the oral option. So let's talk about a little bit about that, the intravenous option versus the oral option, and liposomal option. What is the difference there?
Yeah. I think it's really important to understand that glutathione, so humans have kind of figured out, through science and experimentation that glutathione seems to be highly correlated with living longer, having higher quality of life, all of the things you just mentioned, and much lower disease state. We also figured, we also know that our body produces it. So we're trying to come up with a hack, essentially, to figure out how, as we age and the levels go down, we can supplement or get our glutathione levels up. Now, I think there's something you have to really understand, which is if you just put in glutathione, it doesn't mean that it's getting to all of the cells, and it doesn't mean that it's getting intracellular and doing, getting to the places where it's needed, like the mitochondria or the places within the cells to scavenge the free radicals properly. So that being said, normally if our liver makes it, the glutathione that our body makes does not have to travel through our digestive system to be circulated through our body to where it needs to get to. If we're going to take a supplement, and we're going to take it orally, then we have to consider, is that glutathione getting from where we're putting it to where it needs to go? And it's got to pass through a digestive system, hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, all sorts of things, to then be absorbed through our intestine and be absorbed into the rest of our body. So a lot of oral formulations, oral supplements, capsules, tablets, oils, immersions, things like that, are very ineffective. The glutathione is destroyed before it ever gets through our digestive system and never makes it to where it needs to go. And you're essentially just producing very expensive urine or feces. but IV, they thought, was is so far the gold standard, because the studies that we do measure the level of glutathione in the blood. But again, just because it's high in our blood doesn't necessarily mean it's doing what we want it to do. So yes, if it's in the bloodstream, it most likely is getting to the cells and going intracellular, hopefully. But then they do see in the studies that IV administration is much more effective. Have a Parkinson's patient, they're, having all the symptoms, they get the IV, their symptoms dissipate for a period of time, they get home, they're not having any symptoms, they feel great. And then, as soon as the glutathione circulates out of their bloodstream, their symptoms come back. So it's helpful, but, only while we can actually keep those levels up in the bloodstream, it seems. So how do we get something that can get to all of our cells and potentially even stockpile it, so that we can use it when it's most needed? And I'm really excited about the option of liposomal glutathione because it seems to be able to do just that. Now, we don't have enough research or information on it to be able to say for sure, but it does seem that it makes it past the digestive barriers, the hydrochloric acid, all of that. It's encapsulated in nanoparticles that are liposomes that when eaten on an empty stomach without combining it with other food, seem to be able to be well absorbed into the digestive system. Blood levels do seem to rise. And in addition to blood levels seeming to rise, there also seems to be a storage, stockpiling, if you will, in the liver. So that over time, if you're taking this, every night before you go to bed and you're absorbing it and your body's not using all of it, it's kind of stockpiling in the liver where it stores our normal levels of glutathione to be able to be utilized for when it needs to be utilized. And I guess the last point I'll say on that is that the liposomes, the reason they're using liposomes is because they're covered in a fatty membrane, and all of our cells are also made of a liposomal fatty membrane. So the reason the liposomes work so well is because like oil and oil like each other, right? Like oil and water don't mix, but two oils, they are able to mesh very well, and the liposome is able to be absorbed right through the membrane into the cell. So the levels of intracellular utilization go up much higher as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to talk about a lot of things. I want to talk about some of the effects you had with people that had Tourette's, which there is no cure, really. I want to talk about your innovative approaches that you bring to your current clients and some of the programs that you're running that provide this kind of medicine. I mean, we know each other for probably over 15 years. When I first met you were a child on your tricycle, and I walked you to kindergarten. You remember that?
No. Not quite that long, but yeah.
So, we used to do these walks in Huntington. I used to dress up in Uncle Sam's suit. It was a promotional thing before I did my conference, and 100 people would show up. We'd walk around with signs, eat a healthy apple, exercise, that kind of stuff. So it was just a goofy.
That was like 15 years ago.
Yeah, a goofy, fun event.
Very fun.
You participated in that. Well, first of all, why would you participate in something like that? You were already a doctor, I think, at that time, right? You became a doctor. You were becoming a doctor. Where were you?
Yeah, I was probably either in residency or just became a doctor. I remember I did yoga right before, and then we went and walked through Huntington. It was great.
I was handing out $2 bills as I was walking around. Yeah, news came a bunch of times. They filmed us. It was great. It was a really great promotional idea I had. But so why did you come? You did your yoga, and then you decided I want to go to this crazy event and walk around.
I did, for a few reasons. I think, for a very long time, I have watched how people take care of their bodies and how they don't, or how certain things don't exactly get to the cause of the issue and cause more problems. So I originally, before I went to medical school, actually wanted to become a naturopath. I'm much more, through my experiences of life, though they were just few when I was that young, had seen the effects of, exercise, nutrition, water, and not, and abusing my body. As a young teen, we certainly do all sorts of things and experience the effects of those. And I did gymnastics for 9 years. And I think doing a demanding sport like gymnastics, when you push your body to a certain level, you can become aware of its sensitivities much more quickly. If you're not really pushing your body to a high level, you don't really become aware of how much of a difference food or nutrition or thoughts or mindset make, because you're not pushing the boundaries. You're not actually testing the water. I think partially my experience as a gymnast helped me to really understand the importance of all of these things. And mindset being one in particular. So anyway, I wanted to become a naturopath to help people understand the foundation of health, but they didn't have licensing in New York, and I really wanted to be able to practice anywhere I wanted. So lo and behold, I went through regular medical school, and I really, at the time, told myself, I knew I didn't agree with a lot of conventional medicine. I do think modern medicine is great, but just the way that the system touts, effects over causes and exploits people's illnesses to make money, was pretty obvious to me that those weren't the best ways to go. So I wanted to learn other things in naturopathic medicine, but being that I said, what, I'll go through regular medical school. I'll get the credibility. And when people see that I choose XYZ things, they'll go, well, wait a second. She could use the medicine. She could use these things. Why is she doing what she's doing? And really your event, Alex, was a stand for that, so I was aware of that before I ever went to medical school. And for you to be out there telling the world, I thought that was very important. I almost didn't make it through residency, actually, because of issues like this.
Yeah, well, you fought the whole mandatory vaccine before it was popular, right? That was like we were still in medical school, but they wanted to force it.
I was in residency. Yeah, they tried to mandate vaccination when I was in residency, and I was, in the hospital. And if we didn't get a vaccine, we were ostracized a little bit and made to look stupid, and we had to wear masks in the hospital and stuff.
That's just so amazing. What I have this one doctor. She wrote a bunch of books. She calls it the medical cult. And I don't think I appreciate it because I was never in it, but from the outside, I can see that it's very cult-like. Like as soon as something comes down from the top, everybody falls in line. And if they don't fall in line, then there you are.
Yeah.
The black sheep, the trouble
I'll just say as a caveat, because I know there's so many COVID really polarized people, and there was the, vaxxers and non-vaxxers. And I just want to be clear. I'm a non-polarizing entity. My primary objective in going to Washington when I was in residency was that it shouldn't be mandatory. Vaccines need studies. They need non-corrupt studies that are given to doctors and to the public so they can evaluate and critically think about what they want to put in their body. We're not getting that. And that was really what I was upset about. It was getting corrupt information, not getting information, withholding information, not doing long-term studies, and then mandating that these things need to happen. That to me stinks of all sorts of stuff all the way around.
You can trust a lot of these institutions if they're trustworthy, but I think if you're a thinking person and you see Harvard being bought off by the sugar industry to say that sugar is okay, fat is bad, and then the entire population of the United States becomes obese, and then the whole COVID fiasco with the governmental shutdowns and this tyrannical medical tyranny that they wanted to impose on us, I think it opened the eyes of a lot of us who were already skeptical. And how are you going to convince me to do anything at this point unless you tie me down with 6 people and like stick something in me? It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are like that. They're either like super like sheep, they became more sheepish, and then there's people like me who became more whatever we are. But
I mean, I think I feel badly for, I felt really fortunate that I had my medical education to lean on during that time. And I think I felt badly for the public that didn't necessarily know how to evaluate these issues and make a good decision for themselves. And I think when you're put in that position, what do? You go with who you trust. I mean, like, I don't do electrical engineering, or I don't do like quantum physics. And what am I going to do? I'm going to find a professor that does, or an electrician that does, and I'm going to hopefully trust them based on, asking questions, thinking, questioning, and going with the way that I evaluate people's character. I think people need to look at how they evaluate people's character and who they're listening to. Are they getting well from an obese doctor that is not well themselves, or, like, who are their authorities and why are they listening to them? But I wanted to give people more information so that they could critically think and evaluate and make better decisions for them and their family.
Yeah. So, I mean, we saw as they started this whole thing, you should wear a mask. Okay. Wear 2 masks. Okay. Okay, get a booster. Okay, don't leave your house. Okay, don't go into the restaurants. Okay, if you get a booster, you can have a free, burger and French fries. Okay, like there was all of this stuff, and it just became more and more and more nonsensical. And I think if you've been around on this planet for any length of time and you've experienced propaganda and nonsense, you can see through it like so clearly. But for the majority of the people, it seems like they grew up in Disneyland. They have no idea. They have full trust of the bureaucrats. They have full trust of, the leadership in medicine. But, clearly there's $4 trillion. There's a lot at stake. And the companies that were advocating this made quadrillions of dollars. I mean, there was a lot of perverse incentives.
Yeah. This is a great segue into what I've experienced too. I think what you're getting at, the root of what you're getting at, Alex, is that there are a lot of people out there who are terrified to take responsibility for their life. They are terrified to look in the mirror and go, holy cow, I'm the one making my decisions and my decisions have consequences, and can't somebody else make them for me? Like the government has to have my best interest at hand, right? Like they're like my mom and dad. They don't want anything bad to happen to me. I can just listen to them, right? And I think there's a large portion of the population that really doesn't proactively go after steering their life, taking responsibility for their decisions and really trying to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Because I think there's many reasons for that, but I think they're really afraid of accepting the consequences of their decisions. So sometimes it's easier to just pull the wool over your eyes and just go like, I'm in Disneyland, I'm in fairy tale land, and nothing bad can happen, and I'm protected. God protects me, the government protects me. I have some sort of magic shield around me, and I'm going to be just fine. It's scary to wake up, look in the mirror, and go, shit, I don't know how to navigate this. I don't know how my body works. I don't know if the government has my best interest at hand. And how do I start to figure this out when, I work at McDonald's and it tastes really good, and I'll just wear the masks and they're going to give me donuts. That's cool. It feels good. It's a lot easier than trying to face your fears and navigate things you don't know, I think.
All right. So I want to talk about what happened to you, because I really want to hear your perspective. I never asked you questions while you were in the middle of it. This has been going on for like 5-6 years. The first whiff I got of it was when we were doing the conference in New York City at the Sheraton there. And 2020 showed up with their camera crews looking for little Danielle Roberts, who was there talking to people in her little outfit, all excited with her team. And they showed up. I didn't know what happened there. I just thought, 2020 showing up to my conference, that's pretty good. What did they do to you, these people?
What did they do to you? That experience. That doesn't give people a lot of context, but before giving you guys context, we'll just keep you in the dark for a little while.
We'll start here.
Yeah. That event was tough for me. Here I'm a young doctor. I just, started building an international company that teach people how to actually care for their bodies. My dream of actually trying to build a medical system that's done right, or a well-being system that's done right. And here I am, coming to your event to start to, share this with people, with my team. And I was pretty excited about that. And some of the things that were starting to leak out, some people were starting to create rumors and leak, lies and falsehoods and gossip to the media. And 2020 shows up. I think I might have even called. No, I can't remember because there were two different events, but I think I called you to let you know, there might be some stuff going on. Are you sure you want me to come? Are you sure you want me to do this at your event?
Yes, I do. Definitely I do. Yeah.
And, to be respectful, party crashers coming, but that was even weird for me. Here I am, I'm collaborating with you, a partner, doing good things in the world. And to feel like shoot, like, am I going to bring undue burden on, here's this man who's worked so hard to build a platform to educate people. And like, am I a nuclear activator here, because not everybody has the fortitude you do to stand for what they know is right, and experience a strength in that and a goodness in that and a love in that. So anyway, that was, that alone, I think, was difficult for me. But then being there and you're with your friends and colleagues and you're there, like, you're open to people, right? Because people are asking you questions and your heart's open, you're sharing with people, people are being vulnerable like patients would normally be with me. And then you have somebody show up with a camera in your face and you're like, whoa, I shouldn't probably be talking to you. Because I mean, like, and that's the other thing, like, I always wanted to talk to everybody, but here I am presented with a situation where people don't have the intent, good intent in terms of trying to find the truth or trying to understand. They have the intent of clicks or making money or getting a story and at your expense. So it was pretty tough to navigate. I didn't say much to them, and I tried to just be kind and just say, like, this isn't the time or place. They made, they took like the most unflattering segments of the video, like in whatever position, and like made memes out of them and spread them across the media to discredit me and make me look stupid. Yeah, it was horrible.
I try to use nicer pictures of you that are more flattering and
Do a much better job. Thank you, Alex.
This is an important conversation. We're talking about the glutathione, definitely, and you did an amazing presentation explaining glutathione at our recent event. But the problem here is that the majority of physicians who are trained and get a medical degree would never be open, for the most part, to do anything like this, because it's so far outside the scope of their training or paradigm. They can come in and represent some Pfizer product or some medicine, maybe. But for somebody to be so interested and to self-develop and be an expert in glutathione, for example, and all the other things that the body needs to actually repair itself from the inside out, that takes a level of commitment to self-education that's beyond reproach. It's just unbelievable for you to be able to do that. So I think this is a really important conversation for us to have, because I want people to understand, over the years, I've worked with doctors who found their way into this medicine, either because they developed some kind of a chronic illness or because they got in trouble somewhere in the system. This one doctor in particular that I know, they took his license because he got involved. He has some problems with Medicare. And he got involved with some mafioso types that opened the office. He had no idea. He was just doing doctoring. But then when they slammed the whole thing, he got caught up in that web, and they took away his license. So when you Google him for a long time, you'd see all of this negative stuff. But he was a brilliant, he still is, a brilliant physician who started doing, he was doing cancer therapy, but he started focusing more on immunotherapy. And he eventually got his license back, and he had this very successful, tremendously amazing practice that he helps people. But that experience, it had to be that experience that transformed his whole perspective and had him look outside the box. You kind of started looking outside the box before you even came into the box.
Yeah.
And so that's an unusual situation. And believe me when I tell you, I've met many hundreds of doctors, and you are one of a kind. And plus, so when they came after you like that, I knew you for 15 years. And it's like, if somebody comes after somebody I know for 15 years, and I know them to be the most honorable, the most kind, the most thoughtful, the most generous, the most just amazing human being, like a truly amazing human being. And I start hearing from people I don't know, and people, honestly, I don't trust or like, some kind of propaganda, nonsensical crap that makes no sense, I'm going to be very weary of that messaging. So that's why no matter what happened, no matter what kind of flack I got on social media when you spoke, in my events, I always like, listen, guys, we don't know anything. Where are you making these kind of accusations and decisions? It's a little early for that. So having said that, let's talk about actually what happened, okay? You were branding women, and somebody didn't like that, and they made a big thing about it, and that's where the ball started rolling. So let's go back to the branding process. What was that all about?
I think, if I give the cliff notes, I think most people want to understand, like, so one, there was a women's organization that was created to empower women to be able to reach their goals and stay committed to the things that are important to them. I think that's where it needs to start. Now, as I mentioned to you, when I first came to your event, I wanted to change the way medicine was done in our country. I was watching people die for reasons that they didn't need to die for, on medication lists of 20 medications. And, it was just too much. So I started to create a system to do that. Now, it was my first big company, international company. We were in 3 different countries in 18 months. I was like, this little fledgling entrepreneur, like super excited, and it was amazing. And I learned, my strengths as a leader, and I learned my weaknesses as a leader. It was a tremendous experience for me as an entrepreneur, and only my second business, really. And I learned one of the things that I struggle with, and I think most entrepreneurs can relate to this, is, when they're birthing their baby and they're building the company that's really important to them, I can get a little controlling. I don't want to trust everybody with my baby. And it was not conducive to grow leaders in the way that I needed to and wanted to in the company, to grow this to an international presence that would change the way medicine is done in this country. So I started to realize, oh shoot, I really got to work my issues around, my fears around controlling people, or needing to do everything myself, or, keeping them only at a certain level, but not encouraging to grow way beyond me, and that's really what I wanted to overcome. And I was invited right around the time where my company was struggling. We pulled back out of 3 countries, and we downsized to our corporate location in Albany, New York. I was invited by a woman that I knew very well, who I admired very much, who had a lot of the same values as me. I was trying to change the medical system to become more ethical, and she was trying to change the movie industry. She's an actress for many years on Smallville. Her name is Allison Mack, and she was a very dear friend of mine. She still is a very dear friend of mine. I just haven't been able to speak with her in a few years. But she was, I felt like, we were on parallel missions in different industries, and she wanted to help create movies that were more honorable and more about humanity and love, and change acting into something that unites humanity and creates more love and unity, rather than some of the movies that we see now that create more violence and hate and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and all the things that we celebrate. So anyway, my point in sharing that is, she was a very dear friend. I knew how hard she was working to develop herself and to do good things in the world, and I trusted her very deeply. And she invited me to this kind of, non-conventional women's group that, they wanted to have this organization that was a life commitment. This was not for the faint of heart. This was not like let's do a weekend growth program. We had been doing personal growth seriously to try to grow these companies to a global level for quite some time. So this was not for everybody, but it was for me. I wanted it to be for me, and she invited me to do this lifetime commitment to commit to each other and to ourselves, to be able to overcome our fears and do what it takes to build ourselves into the women that we want to be. I was like, holy shit, holy shit. And it was super non-conventional. It was built in a master slave structure, and of course those words immediately, like people's all sorts of feelings go off and stuff. Now, of course, I wasn't selling myself into slavery no, like that's not what I was doing. But there are certain metaphors that you can use to help you overcome certain fears. We enslave ourselves to all sorts of things, and anytime you feel a victim of, I don't know, your husband telling you what to do or your wife telling you what to do, you've enslaved yourself to certain things, or I don't know, simple things like I have to eat before, I have to have a little dessert after every meal. Yeah. I mean, little things, and we feel like we don't have power over certain things. I don't know a better way to say it. But anyway, the terminology was a metaphor, and it was a metaphor for us to overcome the fears that we have to our attachments or the things we enslave ourselves to. Anyway, needless to say, it was not meant to be public. The terminology was not meant to be public or shared with the universe at all. It was a private female organization, a secret society, which of course triggers everybody again. Nothing should be secret in this world. But there was a small group of women who wanted to build something really meaningful and help other women to be able to build the strength to
When you
make
say
meaningful.
small group, I mean, it's like literally 100 women or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, it started out as a handful. The first line of women that got together to do this, I think there was 7 or 8 women that got together to start this program, and they got together with a man, Keith Raniere, and that's something else that people freak out about. But
How did he get into this whole group? Or how do you, the women got together, but he was the founder? What? How did that?
no, so a little bit of background. So I met Keith in 2013, and I met him through taking certain, I had my own practice at the time, and I was working as a hospitalist, and still same interests. Wanted to understand how the body worked and how our thoughts and our belief systems. I had some really great experience with Bruce Lipton, his books, and I was always, I mean, I know you said I was unique in wanting to always understand, like searching out self-knowledge. I guess that's always like, I guess that was always built in. Like I wanted to understand how my body worked, how this thing works, how, and I really saw a correlation between beliefs and thoughts and physical disease.
Okay.
So I was studying that. I pushed a lot in medical school and residency on things that people didn't necessarily want to look at, but I found Bruce Lipton, and he had done a ton of research to show how our thoughts physically create reactions in our bodies. Chemicals are released and create physical responses. This is much more well accepted now than it was 15 years ago. But Keith Raniere was doing work that I thought was exceptional. He had worked with people who had Tourette's, and this is in the medical industry considered an uncurable neurologic disease that you give medication for, and the medication is given to numb the feelings that cause the ticking. So instead of treating the issue, you numb the person and you suppress the impulses, and they become kind of zombie-like, but they don't tick anymore. So it's not really a human. It's and you know what? It's the best option that the system had at the time. But I believed, I guess, being confronted with an eating disorder when I was younger and learning to take responsibility for that and overcome it, I learned that we are the cause of much more than we think. I don't have an eating disorder. I'm not bulimic. I'm choosing to put food in my mouth and then make myself throw up. You own that, you have power. You own that, you can change it. So if you own that you're the one causing the tics, and there's an impulse in you, an itch, and then a scratch, and the itch is going on, and then the scratch is happening, you have power to overcome that. Now, of course, there's a Keith's program, Keith's work didn't necessarily, he didn't know that was possible for someone to overcome that, but there was an individual, Mark Elliott, who took his courses, took his programs, and discovered for himself that he was, in fact, creating this reaction and was able to overcome it. they then started to actually formally study this and see if they could replicate it with other people. And they were able to do that, where they got it to a point where somebody who's had Tourette's for 12, 20 years within a few hours could stop ticking, could take responsibility for that process and break certain belief systems. Because kind of like Roger Bannister, when he broke the 4-minute mile, Mark Elliott took him a year and a half, but he broke the belief that it was impossible to cure. And now in these other Tourette's
I met this beautiful young woman who you
yes, Isabella. You met Isabella, yes.
You brought to and how life transforming it was for her to not have to take that into the rest of her life, because she was a baby. She was like 20, I don't know, something. Amazing. But let's go back to the branding.
My point is, I give you all this background information, and the reason I do is because you Google and you think he's, an alien devil, something, whatever, but the point is, I had a history with this man. I was very, the work that he was doing, I thought was groundbreaking and very important work. I partnered with him as a business partner to build the company that I mentioned to you about. I partnered with him and several other partners, and he was a tremendous mentor to me and had afforded me so many opportunities in the world to be able to, help build my first international company and help me learn a lot about these connections between our thoughts and our beliefs and physical disease. Needless to say, he had created many programs, and he's I don't know, just loves exploring and creating curriculum to help people understand who they are and how they work. Now, he had also created a program, another women's program called Jeunesse. 2 women had come to him. He didn't create it on his own, but 2 women had come to him that were very close to him. They had been observing the world and how women relate in the world, and some of the issues that they saw with women, and how there seems to be only 2 stances. You're either kind of a weak, more submissive woman who doesn't necessarily assert herself or feel she has the skills or self-esteem to go for the things that she wants, or you're kind of a feminist that claims to be a feminist but does so by more pretending to be a man. So where are the?
That's not attractive, if I may.
I tried it for a while. It has its limitations.
Even on the most attractive, it's very unattractive.
Exactly.
Especially for a man that is actually like a man. If a guy is gentle and so not like a, I don't know, he's not an alpha male.
Yes.
Then it might work, because there are some domineering women, and the guy takes the more female role. Wonderful, good for you. But with me, for example, that would be a very difficult role for both of us. Yeah. So sorry, please go on.
No, I think it's important, because I think a lot of people can relate to this. As I said, I had more control issues in building my first company, and part of that was what we're talking about. I was, I felt like I needed to have control, and I was a more domineering, powerful woman in that way for a long time, because I was afraid of vulnerability and trust and to rely on another man. I grew up a lot hearing in my family, don't never rely on a man, always be able to provide for yourself. And that stuck, so.
But I don't understand. Your family, your dad and your mom has been married forever. You have lots of siblings, and they teach you don't ever rely on a man. I just find that a little bit bizarre. I wish I made this like a 3-hour thing, because there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I just want to understand what happened with the branding. Can we got like 10 minutes left. Can we just go back there?
We'll put a pin in all of that stuff. Yes. Yeah. So the point is, he had already been creating programs to help. So these 2 women came to him, told him, this is what I see. I feel like women need a program to explore who they are, separate from men, separate from being submissive, to find who they are as women. And he, as a thinker and a problem solver, walked and thought and then created a program with them to provide a platform for women to get together in groups. He didn't want to have anything to do with the groups. He didn't want to hear what was going on in the groups. He didn't want to interfere with the women's process, but he helped create a system for women to explore who they are outside of men, outside of any of that stuff. That was called Jeunesse. That was before DOS was born. Now, Jeunesse was going on for years before I think a few other women came to Keith and said, like, you know, we've got Jeunesse, we've got all these tools, but it seems like people aren't really committed to their growth. They're not actually changing. And I don't know. I wasn't part of the first group that birthed DOS and the idea of DOS, but from what I understand, it was a collaboration between Keith and a few of the women that he was close to that came to him and said, hey, this is what I see. I want to make a deeper commitment to you as a partner. And I want to, and I think it started there. And this lifetime commitment, this deeper commitment that they made, they found to be, and the discipline and the practices that were born out of that, they found to be very helpful to them. And I think they wanted to start, it started to develop into a group where they shared it with more and more women. So I happened to be one of the women that was privileged enough to be asked and invited to this group by this other woman, Allison, that I mentioned, that I trusted very, very much. And it happened to be at a time where my company was shrinking, and I saw my weaknesses and wanted to overcome them. And this was a great opportunity for me to be able to do that. Now, fast forward to the branding, about a year into my participation in this group, and I was, really enjoying it. It was hard as hell, but it was very, very good for me. I was asked to help with the branding process, and I thought about it for a while, and I wasn't, there were reservations that I had for sure, especially.
But nothing like this. Like, you couldn't have imagined anything like this.
No. My reservations were, look, I've been a supporter of the sanctity of the body for so many years. I mean, we're talking I'm a vegetarian. I don't put chemicals in my body. I'm like a purist, right? Like super purist. And you want me to kill skin cells? You want me to burn skin cells on purpose? Like, these were my concerns,
I love it. You were so in your world, outside of what
totally.
The nuclear explosion that was awaiting you.
Had no idea. I'm
that's kind of the way life is. We're concerned about all the major things, right? And in our little world. And usually when the problem comes, it comes from such a left side, we have no concept. So I'm sorry, please go on. So
no, it was out of my realm of possibility. I mean, the reason I decided to do the branding to help these women, and I had caveats, by the way. Like I said, I had reservations. I didn't want to kill the little skin cells. I protected them for so long. So why? I needed a good reason. I needed a reason stronger than that. It was something that would be more important, that would be worth damaging skin cells to do. And really what I came to understand that this meant was this was a symbol to help women remember the commitment that they were making to themselves when it got hard. It's a permanent mark. It's a scar that doesn't go away. Like in marriage, you take an oath, you put a ring on your finger. That ring can be taken off. And sometimes, it is. But this was a lifetime commitment. This was a permanent promise to ourselves and to our sisters to work our shit and grow, get our ass in gear. And to build loving relationships, supportive, committed relationships. I thought, my gosh. And she said, the woman who asked me said to me, Danielle, you've committed to medical school. You understand the benefits of following through on your commitments. I mean, how many times did I want to quit gymnastics or medical school through the process? But I didn't. I upheld my commitment. I stuck through it. And on the other side, there are tremendous benefits. There are women that have never had the strength to stay committed in that way and experience what the benefits are on the other side. And I thought, well, if she thinks I'd be good to help women with this, and this is what this stands for, my God, what a beautiful thing to support, And
all right. So I'm sorry. This wasn't done with a hot iron, right?
No, if you look at the Omegas, like the male fraternity, the Omegas, that has very prestigious men like Michael Jordan and Steve Harvey and all sorts, the attorney general, all sorts of majorly prestigious men, they do it with a hot iron. It's a horseshoe and whatever they do. I'm sure they
brand
don't make music.
themselves. Human beings are weird. They pierce
Right.
themselves, they brand themselves, they tattoo themselves. I hate all this stuff. I would never do that to myself. But I understand why people do it. Like, you put a picture of your child or your father who passed away, there's a lot of sentimental stuff. So I don't judge. It's just not my thing at all whatsoever. But human beings do that stuff. And I think the contention was that these women were being forced against their will to being branded, right? That was the whole
Yeah.
on the
Where
story.
this, after the lies first started, and the women who I think were very scared in the beginning started to craft different stories to get themselves out of certain situations. And I think, and I have to believe that they never imagined that this would spiral out of control into what it has, and the consequences would be as grave as they are. But I forget your question now. They
They weren't forced.
Oh, yes, that's your question. I'm like, where was I going with this? Yeah, I could never imagine, I could never, I don't think they could have ever imagined it would have spiraled into this level. But I think after they first started telling those stories and those lies, eventually what had happened is they eventually needed a story that would substantiate their story,
Well, there was a lot of incentive from one extent. The FBI came from the one side and said, if you don't turn on these people, we're going to put you in prison for 20 years. And then from the other side, HBO came and said, we're going to give you $300,000 if you tell us some interesting gossip that we can turn into some kind of a movie or whatever they did.
I just mean, even to get to that point, even to get to the point where the women, like for instance, the woman that went to the medical board and filed a complaint against me, that happened before the FBI got involved. She was motivated enough, she was scared enough about her reputation and I think some personal relationships with her husband and her family, that she felt she had to protect her lies enough that she then had to make up, well, I was forced, I gave collateral, and I felt like I couldn't not get the brand because then my collateral would be released. Now, when you maybe don't tell your husband that you're going to get a brand, and you put yourself in a situation where it might be difficult to tell the truth, then coming up with some other excuse or some other reason as to why you did that, you were forced to do that beyond your will, becomes important, to justify why you did the thing. And what they started to say, which I think robs women of their agency and is extremely terrible for women's empowerment, is they started to say, I had no choice. I gave this collateral and I had no choice. But it doesn't make sense. You were asked by a woman that you trusted to join an organization. In order to get information to join the organization, you had to give collateral. That was part of the thing. You had to want it bad enough that you were willing to give something that was personal to you. This organization, this woman who asked you, you weren't given any other information. So the woman that asked you, you had enough of a relationship with her that you were willing to give her something very important because you thought what she had to tell you was of value. So you earned getting that information by giving something. And then when she gave it to you, you could decide if you wanted to join or not. And if you wanted to, you gave more collateral in order to be able to get in. So there was an earning process. You weren't forced to give that collateral. And
all this is difficult to explain, but it's so easy to create these slogans, doctor brands women.
Yeah. Against
their will, sex cult. There was no sex, from what I understand. Not a lot of sex. A little
Not
sex.
in my life.
Sorry to hear that.
I know. I'm sorry to hear that too, actually.
So it was essentialized to a point where it's just so crazy, and a lot of people are making a lot of money, and they don't really care who they have to steamroll over. You know, a little doctor who spent her life becoming a doctor, invested her whole self into serving humanity. So I'm a believer in you. I'm not a believer in the system, and I hate the system that destroyed you, because they did it to you. Tomorrow they can do it to me, and the day after they can do it to whoever's here listening to us. And we have a major catastrophic problem with a lot of the groups and industries that are leading our nation, the enforcement agencies and all of that. And we can see it clearly. And you are a small microcosm of that. I mean, you're a big microcosm from your point of view, but like,
right. No, this is not just happened to me. I mean, this has been happening to people for centuries, especially minorities. I mean, this is the discrimination that I have experienced as being part of a cult, or, being canceled in this way. I mean, it is, I do have a very close Black friend who said, as much as discrimination as she has experienced in her life, she was also in the cult with me. And she said, this, what we've experienced as a result of the media and the legal system, the FBI, and this type of discrimination is far beyond what she's experienced as a minority. It's quite violent. It's quite violent.
I wish we set aside 2 hours, because I have a lot of other
Let's
questions.
do more. Let's come back.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to explore this further, and I want to talk to you about like more interesting things to me.
Yeah.
Not that this is this is a little bit more of a drama, but I want to know about vitamin D. I want to know about vitamin C. I want to know about how do you heal the digestive system. I want to know about how do you get your body to drop off the extra fat that you've had for the last 15, 20 years, and you can't. I mean, you are in great shape, which I love. And but I walk around the world, and like I go to this coffee shop in the morning where I do my day prep, and a guy came in. He was tall, but he was also like obese, nicest, sweetest guy. But my heart breaks for him, and it breaks for all these young women who are 16 years old and 50 pounds overweight. Like, what kind of a life do they have awaiting them? They're going to miss out on all the beautiful things of life, and that is a travesty. And then they're going to have coronary heart disease when they're 30. But now the world is embracing that. The world is going off the rails, Dr. Roberts. And so, one of the things that I really love about you, and I hate that you lost your license, but on the other hand, you are kind of free to do whatever it is that you want without being constrained by this license, because now they turn this license into, talk about slavery for a lot of doctors. Did you see how they were leading them around for the last 3 years with that license as a leash?
Yes.
Horrific. And they snap to it.
Even what they're doing with Jordan Peterson. I mean, like they're using these things as leashes, like you said.
Well, if we're going to create a new medical system, we cannot do it with people who are the true indoctrinated believers of the current one. You were a square peg around that round hole. You never fit into it. That was not your nature.
No, not at all.
Not your nature. And I mean, nobody would have imagined that it would have worked out, gotten off the rails so badly. But I thought it would be the pharmaceutical companies. I thought I would build something so great it would challenge the pharmaceutical companies' pockets, and they would take my license. Like, that was the biggest.
I would be happy. Not this. I mean, this is not what I wanted.
Well, listen, we'll have to do this again, because I really want people to get to know you like I know you.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you were guilty, I'd still love you, but I wouldn't be doing this. If I felt that you did something wrong, it would have been like, okay, I love Danielle, but she'll have to figure this out. But I just, when I see wrong with healthcare, right? I spent the last 25 years trying to fix it, which I have to be honest, it's not an easy road. But I think we're making headway, because that system, the bureaucracy, $4.3 trillion, is either going to collapse on its own weight, and hopefully not pull the country down with it. And then some kind of a other system has to be brought to light.
Yes.
And I think what we're designing here is a much more intelligent system of keeping people optimally well for the duration of their life and really pulling out as much life as possible out of those last final 20 years.
Yeah.
Like, how do we create, like, people save money their entire life to retire, but how do we save that life energy so we can have the money, the time, and the ability and the desire to live fully until we're, whatever it is, 80, 90, 100, whatever it is. All right, I have to stop now, I think, because I said 1 hour, and so that's what it is. But Dr. Roberts, I want to thank you for your strength. I mean, you are just one tough cookie. Holy smoky potatoes! They really put you through the grinder, my friend. But you're still, smiling, happy, and optimistic. It's a little weird.
Not all the time. Not all the time. Not all the time. I have my moments. No, I'm just crawling along.
So if we're going to transform healthcare, it's going to be you and I and people like this who are going to do it. Anything you want to end with? Anything you want to mention? I
honestly just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've had some of my closest friends desert me at times like this, and you truly have this passion and this courage and the same fortitude I have in me to stand for what is right, even when it's very, very difficult. And I really can't thank you enough for being that type of man.
All right,
We'll have our own secret handshake soon.
Thank you, my beautiful friend.